Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we talk a little bit about early times bottled in bond. What has been going on with this bottle? Well, I think we have some answers. Run the video. All right then, folks, thank you for joining us for another new and exciting episode here on the Whiskey Cove, and we will be talking about early times bottled in bond. What has been going on with this bottle of late? We reached out to some folks over at Sazerac, and I believe now we have some pretty good answers to share with you folks at home, which we will go into in a little while here. With that being said, in the last few months, I've been talking about early times bottled in bond, but in the sense of great bottle of whiskey, such a budget hitter, anything for around $25 if you can pick it up for that. I think that it beats absolutely everything out of the park. It is my first drink of the night. It is my go-to sipper any day of the week. I love early times bottled in bond. And you know what? So do you folks at home. You are constantly commenting on my videos how good of a whiskey that is. However, you wonderful folks at home, pointed out something very recently for me, and that is early times bottled in bond is nowhere to be seen. Where is this bottle of whiskey? And I read those comments and I was like, okay, I need to investigate this a little further. So I've been going around a lot of local stores here in Colorado where I'm from, and I've been noticing that too. A lot of the big liquor stores here have not been getting new shipments of early times bottled in bond in. And we used to see them all the time on the shelves, and I've been having conversations with these liquor store owners, and they said that they just can't get them. I am still fortunate enough that some smaller stores around by me still has some older stock, but it is not being distributed. And I think we now know why. So early times bottled in bond wasn't always owned by Sazerac. Most recently it was owned by Brown-Forman until Sazerac acquired it in mid of 2020. So going back about 4.5 years ago, Sazerac bought the brand, and they also bought Canadian Mist and Collingwood brands. Those three brands they brought over to Sazerac. So early times bottled in bond. There's a few things we know for sure about it. We know that it is a bottled in bond whiskey. What is a bottled in bond whiskey? So the liquor must be produced by a single distiller at a single distillery. So any distillate that Brown-Forman distilled, they couldn't blend it with anything from Sazerac. For it to be called a bottle in bond, it had to be distilled by one distiller over one distilling season. So aging as well, it has to be at least 4 years old, aged in a federally bonded warehouse under government supervision. At least 4 years old. It could be many more years older, but it has to be at least 4. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. The proof must be 50% ABV or 100 proof. And then lastly, the label must identify the distillery where the liquor was distilled, and if different, where it was bottled. And then the MSRP on this bottle is $25, which is a price will vary by location and retailers as well. Also as well, it is released in 1 liter bottles, which is a full 1/3 more worth of whiskey than the standard 750 milliliter packaging, normalizing this price tag from $25 to around $18.75 for a 750 milliliter bottle, which is really good. So we know just by the aging, if it needs to be aged for at least 4 years, right around now we might start to see some stuff being produced by Sazerac because it is bottled in bond. Knowing that the whiskey has to be at least 4 years old, right about now, we should start to see some of Sazerac's own distillate come out. And when they produced the Brown-Forman, this is the Brown-Forman bottle, this has the black cap on it at the top there. When the kind of sale happened, a lot of folks talked a little bit about how they tasted a little difference between the black cap bottles and then the new blue silver cap bottles, or stainless steel cap or aluminum cap bottles. For me personally, I didn't really taste any difference between the two. I felt like the taste was maybe minimal, and that could have been put down to just different batches being distilled and bottled at one time. However, there were some people who swore there was a big difference. However, we did reach out to Sazerac because, like I said, can't find these bottles everywhere. We needed some answers. So we sent the email, and this email was as such. Good evening. I've noticed that stores around me have stopped selling early times bottled in bond. I know in 2020 Sazerac acquired the brand, so changes would present themselves around about now, as it is bottled in bond at least 4 years old. And we don't know the exact age statement. Like I said, it's at least 4 years old, but it could be higher than that. So my question was, is this whiskey continuing to be made, and has the amount being produced dropped recently? I'm a big fan, and I would love to know more about what's going on. And they reached out to me quite fast, actually. And I'm not going to name drop the person who reached out to me, but I did send them this email. And the response was as such. This is really interesting. It gives us a lot of insight here. Yes, we have been producing Early Times Bottled in Bond since April 2021. So they acquired the brand around June 2020, but they only started distilling the distillate for this bottle almost a year later in 2021. Our supply should start to become available after April 2025. The issue that you are experiencing from the decrease in production prior to the purchase of the brand. So what that individual there is saying, that before Sazerac bought the brand, or right around that time, Brown-Forman just almost stopped making the distillate for this bottle, or they weren't giving the barrels to Sazerac, because this mash bill for Early Times Bottled in Bond is actually the same mash bill that Brown-Forman uses for the King of Kentucky, albeit aged for a lot longer. So then they definitely have a use for that distillate, so they probably just stopped distilling bottles, or stopped distilling whiskey to put in the barrels for Sazerac. So what they're telling me is that after around April 2025 of next year, so in the next 6 months, we will see a 100% distilled bottle of Early Times Bottled in Bond by Sazerac. So for everybody who's been saying in the last few years that these bottles, the regular metal cap and the black top taste different, there seems to be no substance to that whatsoever. But what we will see in April 2025, that Early Times Bottled in Bond will ramp up, and we should start seeing these bottles more in the States here. And we'll probably definitely be seeing them in Colorado. So then you can maybe ask yourself, is there a big difference between these distillates? And if there is, then that would be the reason why, because there's a different distillery distilling it. And it can't be a blend of two, because this whiskey is bottled in bond. But then also reading between the lines here, they said that they've only been producing Early Times Bottled in Bond since April 2021, and that the supply should start to pick back up in April 2025. So that tells us right there that Early Times Bottled in Bond, or at least the way that Sazerac are going to do it, is 4 years old. Because that's exactly what that person says. They might not have meant to say that, but reading between the lines there, Early Times Bottled in Bond is 4 years old. So what you might be able to taste differently is that if Brown-Forman were aging their barrels for longer than 4 years, we might get a more youthful distillate from Sazerac. The label might look different, the bottle might look different. That is all conjecture, I guess, at this point. We don't know those facts. This is open to interpretation, which is really interesting. So what I would do, I would kind of maybe still look for the metal caps of these bottles, maybe load up a little bit on them there. You might not want to hear that if you can't find these bottles already, but it sounds like there's going to be big changes coming in April 2025. Will they change the price? Will they change the 1 liter style? That will be kind of waited to be seen. Hopefully not, because this is, again, like I said earlier, like I preferenced this video, it's my favorite bottle of whiskey in that price tag. It just beats everything out. But that could all change April 2025. So mark your calendars. And I haven't really heard anybody else talking about this, so I feel like this is really important news. And thank you to the Whiskey Cove community who's been pointing out to me that you haven't been able to find this whiskey, and I guess now we know why. Is during the time that Sazerac acquired the brand, there was no crossover in barrels. There was not really anything being distilled and passed over during that time. They just backlogged all the whiskey to kind of compete up to April 2025, and then Sazerac will take over. So I think we might need to do another part of this video in the future. Maybe when April 2025 rolls around, we can get a new bottle of Early Times Bottled in Bond. Will it look the same? Regardless, we will get the bottle. We will see hopefully where it is produced. This says distilled and bottled by Early Times Distilling Company, Louisville, Kentucky. I highly anticipate that when we get the new bottles, they will be bottled and distilled by Sazerac, Frankfort, Kentucky, or maybe the Barton Distillery. It depends where they've ended up distilled, and I wasn't able to get that information, but it's very likely it will be the Frankfort, Kentucky at Buffalo Trace, or it will be Bardstown, Kentucky at Barton. Heck, it could be somewhere else that I'm not aware of, but we will wait and see. But do check the back of the bottles, because that is where you'll get your answers from. If it says distilled in Louisville, Kentucky, then you know you have the Brown-Forman juice. Anything else outside of that, then you have the Buffalo Trace juice, or I should say the Sazerac juice. So thank you for watching today's video. Definitely share this video. I think this has some really awesome and pertinent information if you love this brand, so everybody else has a great idea of what's going on. As we drink through the world's whiskies one glass at a time, thank you so much for joining me. Cheers.